The world of sci-fi has been promising us holograms for years. Think holochess in Star Wars or Princess Leia beaming a message out of R2-D2.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
A lot of the holograms we've seen outside of sci-fi, like Tupac or Michael Jackson appearing on stage, have actually just been clever illusions. But Silicon Valley company Lightfield Lab has created a real hologram, without the headgear, that you can see in front of you just like a real object. I'm here at Lightfield Lab in Silicon Valley, ready to see a concept known as solid light. They're pitching this as a genuine hologram. This isn't virtual reality, this isn't augmented reality, this isn't a picture of Tupac on a stage. This is going to be something that feels like a real object that I can actually walk around and see, interact with from multiple angles. I have no idea what I'm about to see through that door, but I'm pretty excited to check it out. Unlike other technologies, solid light doesn't rely on spinning volumetric displays or reflections projected up onto angled glass. Instead, Lightfield Lab says this technology is the highest resolution holographic display platform ever designed. A light source sends light through a multi-layered piece of polymer known as a phase guide that steers and focuses the light into mid-air, essentially creating a hologram in the space in front of you. The result is what Lightfield Lab calls a solid light object that moves, refracts and reflects in physical space. Seeing it with my own eyes, I realised the solid light name makes sense. At first, it looks like you should be touching something solid, even if it's just a screen or a piece of reflective glass. But I was just passing my hands through light. So I'm in front of the solid light demonstration now, and it looks probably to you like I'm just watching a TV screen, that I'm just standing in front of a flat display, but it's actually a hologram. Sorry, I just had to wait for the chameleon to catch a fly there. It feels like it should be about here. This is where it should feel like I'm touching a screen, but there's nothing here. And if I put my hand further through, it's like I can still see the animal, but my hand is passing through it. I'm 6 inches into this box and I can't feel anything, it's just air. So what should feel like a flat screen here, maybe I'd be touching the very front of the animal right here. I'm able to actually pass through it, and it looks like it should be fairly solid, but it's not, it's just thin air. And the coolest thing is, I mean, my glasses do look great, but these aren't 3D. These are just because I have bad eyesight. So if I take them off, with or without glasses, it's exactly the same. It's pretty crazy. No headset, no 3D glasses, and like no screen. One of the coolest demos I saw was using a magnifying glass to actually magnify the hologram, just like it was a real object. I didn't just see a close-up of a display like I would with a two-dimensional screen. The hologram I saw was about 10 inches across, and it was being generated by a single solid light panel, though you don't actually see that panel in the installation. Lightfield Lab says each one of those 28-inch diagonal panels generates an effective density of 10 billion pixels per square metre, and they can be scaled up, potentially using multiple panels to make a massive wall. Unlike other light effects that use forced perspective to create the illusion of dimensions, you can still see the same hologram from multiple angles without any distortion, kind of like you'd see a real object. So I'm standing here about 1 metre or 3 feet away from the display or the demonstration, and this is where the Lightfield Lab team says that's kind of the optimal viewing angle. And if I walk around, it's pretty amazing. You walk around and it's not like, maybe another display where it starts to look warped or a weird angle because it's designed just to be viewed in this one spot. Of course, the magic here really comes when you see it with your own eyes. We saw this hologram in a small room, and it's hard to capture the full effect and play it back on a 2D screen. But this is just the beginning. Lightfield Labs says you'll be able to see this tech out in the real world as early as next year. The company has financial backing from the likes of Samsung, Verizon, and Comcast NBC Universal, and says it already has alpha partners that are planning to use the tech to create their own hologram displays. So the idea is you could come up to a hologram display maybe at an airport, at an entertainment venue, at a theme park, and instead of just seeing flat screens on a wall, you could see these displays and actually experience holograms in person. So instead of just looking at what is effectively a larger version of your own TV, you could kind of see something that appears to be a real object, but it's actually just made up of light.
We recently saw an interactive holographic simulation on Star Trek Discovery, and I thought it would be fun to explore the in-universe history of holograms. When Commander Tucker encountered a lifelike holographic simulation in 2155, he was awestruck. 3D simulations were supposedly achievable by humans at the time, but depth perception and perspective were fairly limited. It's safe to say that photorealistic interactive environments were beyond human technology at the time.
I heard about the holographic recreation.
It wasn't like any visual simulator I've ever tried. It's more like actually being there.
The first dating we can get for humans using true holographic technology is sometime between September and November 2151, but it was already fairly advanced and intuitive at the time, so it's safe to assume that the technology existed for a while before. The capabilities and limitations of this holographic technology are unknown, like what sorts of complexity was possible at the time, but even when a slightly more advanced version of the technology was used in 2153, it operated using the same principles and rendered the same basic shapes. Other holographic technologies existed in this time period as well. Vulcans had highly miniaturized holographic projectors, and at one time had similar technology dating back to at most the time of Surak in the 4th century. Romulans also used holographic technology in 2154 to disguise at least 2 prototype vessels. By 2256, after over 100 years of development and utilizing several emitter arrays in 360 degrees, Starfleet was capable of reproducing photorealistic environments with some degree of human interactivity. Before, energy weapons were capable of interacting with holograms, but here we see some basic physical interaction as well, possibly with the use of force fields. This simulation was also capable of reproducing photorealistic and finely animated humanoid figures, but it remains to be seen if they would be physically interactive. Also around this time, we see the fairly regular use of holographic projections for real-time communication. These images were not solid and experienced frequent interruptions and signal distortions, but were possibly the result of fusing real-time parametric scans with simple holographic projectors, both technologies that existed 100 years earlier. Klingons would also use similar technology, which they would use at least through 2293. Here, there's also some evidence that the Federation was still using this technology, or at least facilitating it. In order for the Klingons to get a holographic image of the Federation president, such an image would need to be captured from the president's office. This sort of holographic communication would also be seen used by other cultures. For instance, in 2267 on the planet Beta 3 in star system C111, Spock and Kirk appeared familiar with the technology, and Kirk was only really impressed that there was no visible holographic projector.
Projection kit. Unreal. But beautiful, Mr. Spock, with no apparatus at this end.
As far as Starfleet using holographic technology in this era, we could mention viewscreen technology. In the 2360s and the 2370s, viewscreens used holographic technology to simulate true 3D images, but it's unknown if viewscreens at this time utilized similar methods. However, the introduction of lifelike simulations within a viewscreen could easily explain the transition from windows to fully enclosed bridges. But the only confirmed use of Starfleet holographic technology in this era would be in 2270, inside the recreation room of the USS Enterprise. This room was capable of producing photorealistic environments with a high level of physical interactivity. The room could introduce sudden changes in elevation and weather conditions, but the interactivity of environments was limited to the confines of the room itself, the implications being that if you walked in a straight line, you would find the wall eventually. This technology would make vast leaps in realism. 94 years later, Starfleet would introduce the holodeck on its starships. While photorealistic holographic environments were well represented by this time, the holodeck seamlessly combined old-style holographic projections with transporter and replicator technology, resulting in a truly lifelike and completely immersive experience.
Sounds, smells.
You make it sound so real.
Well, that's how it felt. believe these simulations could be this real.
Much of it is real, sir.
Much of a holodeck simulation was not merely light and force fields, but literal, replicated matter. Furthermore, holodecks utilized advanced artificial intelligence programs to create lifelike characters with dynamic interaction that were virtually indistinguishable from real people. In several cases, these artificial intelligence programs were so nuanced that they resulted in self-awareness. In the 2370s, holographic technology had progressed to the point where lifelike holographic programs could be projected outside of highly specialized rooms. Now, a room only needed to be outfitted with specialized projectors. Holographic communication had likely fallen out of favor up to this point due to its low fidelity and relatively low benefit-cost ratio. But as the technology improved, old concepts could finally be realized as originally envisioned. Now it was like literally standing in the same room as another person, and the illusion was seamless. Within a short period of time, this sort of projection was possible throughout a complex space, which was utilized in the development of a fully interactive artificial intelligence emergency medical hologram. Starships using the EMH originally only equipped sickbay with holo-emitters, but later starships implemented this technology throughout entire ships, notably on the USS Prometheus. In 2371, yet another use for holograms was discovered when Voyager's EMH program devised a way to simulate humanoid organs with holographic projections. The procedure required the subject to be completely immobilized. In the next year, Voyager's EMH devised a method for communicating with comatose patients through holographic means, which, now that I think about it, could also be used as a temporary option for patients immobilized with holographic organs. These major breakthroughs ought to have profound impacts on medical treatment, but due to a lack of data past this point, it remains to be seen how they might be used and expanded on. And that's as far as we know. Holographic technology is familiar to every era, but it experiences huge leaps over time in its reproduction of reality. I hope you